Feudal Japan is more frightening than ever in this upcoming first-person psychological horror game. Let's talk about Ikai. Feudal Japan and horror, they're very unique. There's a lot of really creative aspects about both. Talk to me about the inspiration behind that.
Well, we wanted to do a horror game because it was the type of genre that best fit our team because we are only 3 people. So with our skills, we decided that horror game was the best. And the Feudal Japan theme came because it was something we all liked, and also we felt that it was original, something that hasn't been done much in video games. There are not many, and we thought it could be a nice setting and something to stand out from the others.
Feudal Japan, there's so much there, there's so much history and lore and stuff you can really take from. So is there a challenge in kind of like pinpointing different things to create a game about?
Yeah, it was very difficult. At first we thought it would be a bit easier because we have all the world building already established by Japanese legends and all the folklore, but it was difficult to pick certain things and leave the others because everyone expects like these ghosts and these other, and we cannot put everything into the game, so it was difficult to summarize. We just chose what we felt we liked the most and tried to put it in the game.
Talk to me about the world that the game takes place in and the challenge in kind of creating that world to match the setting and to match the horror genre.
The game takes place in a shrine, although we have other environments. The player will have the role of a priestess of that time, and this priestess will have to purify the evil creatures that have managed to come to our world. And the world will have the shrine, which is the main scenario, also a forest and a cave.
So is the world is it more compact? Kind of talk to me about the scaling in the world itself.
It's relatively small, although we have forests, they are quite limited. We didn't want it to look like an open world, but we still want to do different environments so it doesn't feel boring.
So what's the challenge in creating a horror setting versus any other? You have your lighting, which is integral in a game like this. You have, usually in horror games, you want to create kind of more compact, more claustrophobic settings to make players feel more aware, things like that. What's the biggest challenge in developing something like that?
First, need to know about what the player will feel at every point of the game. So you have to plot like a pace, like in the movies happen, that you know the intensity at each moment, and after that you have to make like the level. Like if you want the player to feel calm, something more illuminated maybe, with not as many threats as in other parts, and that's quite challenging, especially if you want to make a level that could be reused in the future, because maybe you design something that looks too illuminated at that point of the game, but maybe later on it looks like dull, I don't know, like it's not threatening. So the main challenge is to create different areas for the pacing of the game and that they fit.
There's puzzles and then there's seals in this game. Talk to me about each of those and how they impact the gameplay, and then kind of break down how those evolve as the game goes on.
Okay, we have the seals, which are the main mechanic of the game. You have to draw a seal for each creature, for each enemy, and you may die during the seal making process, and you have to learn about when is it best to stop drawing or to continue, or whether to retake the seal if you fail. And it's like this kind of puzzle, which doesn't look like a puzzle, but it actually is, because you have to make the pattern right and concentrate over the pressure. The puzzles on the other side are just regular puzzles like in other horror games that will only prevent the player from progressing in the story, just some challenges to overcome.
Horror games is kind of hit or miss. Is there combat or is it mainly survival?
There's no combat, it's mainly survival, yeah. It's more psychological, it's not like stealth or that kind of survival. You just have to overcome the challenges that you meet, and that's it. You do not have to face the monsters directly.
Are there like tools or things you're going to get as the game goes on that will like help you along your path or things of that nature, or is it just kind of solving those puzzles, doing those seals, and just kind of surviving as the game goes on?
It's just creating those seals. There is no other tool. Part of the interest of the game is that you only have the seals and it is your only protection. You won't find anything else that may help. You only can run.
With this game, especially with a horror game, the story's everything. It really kind of sucks the player in and keeps them engaged. engaged in what's going on. So talk to me about the story behind this game.
The story is about a priestess who is responsible of the shrine and has to drive the evil spirit away, just with the only help of the seal growing.
Is it a more linear progression where you don't have that freedom to explore the world you're in, or is it much more open to be able to kind of see different places and go different places? Talk to me about that world that players are going to be able to progress through as the story goes on.
Well, the story of the world is quite linear, but you don't have the feeling of it being linear because the spaces are open spaces with many sites to explore, and although they are limited and controlled environments, they are still linear.
Does this game have any kind of alternate endings, multiple storylines, things of that nature, depending on kind of the choices you make, the seals you progress with, things of that nature? Or is it just you have the one storyline, you're following it, and you're trying to get to that end?
We wanted to have just one storyline because too many endings would be impossible to handle for a 3-people team, and maybe people complain if you make binary choices that don't lead to multiple endings, just a couple. So we felt like better concentrate on a very well built story and that they followed this one.
I noticed that you have a stealth setting and then you also have a run setting. Can you kind of explain what goes into those choices for players, and then on the other side of it, what goes into creating an AI like that within the game?
Actually, there's not many AI characters because it requires a lot of testing and it can easily lead to unexpected situations. So the AI that we have implemented is very limited in just a few places, and most of it is just psychological horror. Let the players think that they have to run or stealth and let them make up their own crazy ideas about the game. We just tell you the controls and you use the movement however you like.
So is there any real like AI within the game itself, or you kind of just focused on just having these set scenes that kind of the players will be interacting with?
There is AI, but it's not very frequent. We have one only enemy with AI and the others are scripted situations that the player will face.
Tell me about the enemies that you're going to be seeing in this game, the different monsters, ghosts, things of that nature. Kind of what are players going to be running into?
Well, they have their own behavior, but not only in terms of programming, because as I said, most of them are scripted, but in terms of gameplay, some of them will require you to go stealth, others will like chase you and you'll have to run from them, and yeah, depends on the monster, you'll have to do one thing or the other, but you'll easily see depending on which type of monster you're facing.
Are there a lot of different kinds of these enemies in the game? Is there like one or two? Kind of walk me through just like the different ones you're actually going to be going up against.
In a full game, we'll have 4 or 5 enemy characters.
When you're approaching this game, just as a whole, and you really, you decide we're making a horror game, we're going to dive into it and we're going to look at it from this approach. There's limitations with that. What's the challenge in just approaching the creation of the gameplay and the story?
I think it is that you may think that it is a simple genre, but just the walking simulator takes longer than you think because you have to think of every event, and also there's a lot of lighting work that you don't see at first, and then if you get deep into the development, you see that something may seem to work but it doesn't, because you have to create a really good mood to make the players get scared, and you don't get it just with the first iteration. You have to keep trying until you get the correct mood, and other games don't require to get such a good mood, but this genre does.
So with that, talk to me about the gameplay itself. Kind of walk me through how that's going to play out within the game, the different mechanics the players are going to have, things of that nature.
Yeah, the players are going to have the typical puzzles to solve also. Some, I wouldn't say jump scares, because we do some build-up to lead to a jump scare, but scary events, this type of frightening illumination also. And in terms of mechanics, it's a walking simulator with that special mechanic of writing the seal, which will happen once a level, and then some puzzles.
How many levels are you planning for in this game at this point?
It will have around 8 levels.
And then your launch date date is March, correct? Is that what I saw?
Yeah, 29.
Okay. So leading up to that, what's the game plan? What's the content map? And then after that, do you guys have plans for DLC, just patchwork? Walk me through what's going on for this year for this game.
Well, not that the game is finished. We are only working on the marketing plans and helping out the publisher with all the stuff that they need before the release. But we haven't planned any DLC yet. Since it is our first game, we don't know which will be the reaction of the players. So we'll wait until we see if there's interest in another title or if we do something else instead.
You know, when you talk about the players, one thing that comes to mind is a lot of developers really focus on their Discord communities or their social media communities and how they react to their games as they're kind of creating them. So with something like that, first off, was that a factor for you? And second off, how much did that impact the overall development of this game as you kind of went from that initial beginning phase to where you're almost at launch right now?
Well, yeah, we also received feedback from our community. One main thing that was changed was that we initially had the voiceover in English only, but as we saw that there was interest in having it in Japanese, since the theme is Japanese, we decided to invest in Japanese voiceover as well. At first we thought that English was enough because most of people play the games in English and that's the language they understand, but we saw that people were interested into Japanese language even though they don't understand it. I think it just feels more like in the mood. So that's something the community asked us and we thought it was a good idea, so we finally implemented it.
Was there any other like major changes that kind of got implemented through player feedback, or was it just kind of that was the biggest one right there, that kind of integrating that extra language in there?
That was the main one because we didn't have many other feedback that was possible. I mean, some people asked for a third-person game and it's obviously very difficult to change. You cannot go from a first person to a third person that easy. But the other major thing was that of the language, that this one we could do. So we decided to go for it.
Third person versus first person. When you guys first brainstormed this game, first person, obviously it makes things more claustrophobic. It makes you feel like you're more immersed in the game itself, versus third person is more of a, I guess, a bird's eye view with a more aesthetic feel to it. From a strategy standpoint, what pushed you guys towards that first person?
It was that our main idea was that of the seal, and the seal writing feels more natural in first person because you have this seal and you have to actually draw it and it feels more natural. So in first person, as you say, it feels more claustrophobic as you are inside of the game, and since it is psychological, we decided to go for first person instead of third person.
Okay.
If the game would have been about combat, we'll probably have chosen third person, but that is not the case. So because of the main mechanic, we decided first person.
Once you get to launch, what's this game launching on? Is it launching on consoles? Is it just PC? Kind of where is it going to be at?
PC and consoles. We have PS4, PS5, and Nintendo Switch. We'll have both digital and physical editions.
And there it is. That is Ikai, an upcoming psychological horror game set in feudal Japan. I was very excited to get this interview, very excited to explore this game. I cannot wait to see more. It'll be releasing on March 29th to all platforms, so why not go down to the description, check out their Steam page, wishlist the game over there, and check out all of their social media pages while you are down there. Before you go, why not like, comment, and subscribe to the side quest. I am Nick, and I will see you all next time.